Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. This week for my bonus video, I wanted to talk all about Asshai, the place Melisandre comes from. The full name that people call it is Asshai by the Shadow. The Shadow refers to the name of the region, like you would refer to the Dothraki Sea. For those that don't know, that's the area where Daenerys' dragon eggs came from. There's a lot of similarities to the Valyrian Peninsula, which is dotted with the 14 flames, the 14 volcanoes. So there might be some active volcanoes up around Asshai, where we might be able to find another clutch of dragon eggs. Asshai itself is mostly a trading city, even though the region is generally thought of as being very sinister. The problem is that it has a culture that predates the Valyrian freehold, but it's lost to time. The people that actually live there have no idea who built the city. Most of what we learn about it is through anecdotes given by other characters, which you can't always trust 100%. The other big thing about the area is it's where Shadowbinders come from. That's the type of magic that Melisandre practices. She's a Shadowbinder who is a follower of the Red God. You can be one without the other, although the dominant faith is R'hllor. As you can see from the map, because it's so far east, it's probably a place we're never going to get to see on the show, which is a bummer. Usually a lot of the context that we get for stuff like this comes from the expanded materials too. It's referred to in A Song of Ice and Fire, but it's not like somewhere where the characters actually travel to. Or at least we should say travel to yet, because I mean it's always possible that someone could go there in the future. This area here's the Jade Sea. There's a lot of trading that goes on in this area, especially around Korth. So usually when we get stories, it's from sailors, like the Ironborn people, like Euron Greyjoy. It'd be nice if Melisandre talked a little bit about her homeland. She's not super chatty when she's not talking about the War of Light and Dark. There are certain areas in the world, though, where Melisandre says her power is greater. So like in Asshai where she trained, that's where her power is really great. But at the Wall right now, she said it's even greater. There's really no context to understand why that is. And even though it seems like the series is positioning Daenerys as a protagonist with her dragons against White Walkers and the Night's King, which a lot of people think are really evil, especially after last week's episode, any connection between Melisandre's power and dragons is completely anecdotal. It's all just theories. I know everyone's crossing their fingers hoping that some ice dragon is going to bust out of the wall or something like that. There is evidence that the wall might come down during the series, but we have no idea if that's true. When you look at the history of Asshai and the Shadowlands, it gives you better context with which to frame the Night's King and the White Walkers. Really just two sides of a coin. It's not so much about good and evil. Even George R. R. Martin, when all the craziness with Sansa happened after episode 6, he did a big interview where he said, "My stories are all about struggle, not so much about good and evil." I just think it means that even though Daenerys and her dragons might seem like the diametric opposite of the Night's King and his army of White Walkers, it doesn't necessarily mean that Daenerys or her dragons are good characters. There's a lot of people hoping that Daenerys might end up being the villain of the series. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but like last week's episode, she got those crazy eyes when she talked about crushing the nobles of Westeros. I think that's her just showing more agency, saying, this is what I want to do, this is what I believe in, this is why I want to do it. If you're getting a vibe of the Mad King off of her, that's Dan and Dave just messing with you a little bit. They want you to see that as a possibility. That's why Tyrion entered the equation, because now that he's there, hopefully he'll give her some good advice. Daenerys, in the context of the series, is still a little kid who has some really powerful dragons, so it's like giving a little kid the keys to a car. It's just, no matter what you do, something terrible is going to happen. Tyrion, as bitter as he is, seems like he generally has the best interests of the world at heart. He's not a bad person, despite the fact that he's full of hate. I mean, he still wants to help people. At some point, they will have to meet Melisandre. I think that's the point where they'll really start to blur the lines between good and evil. I mean, we saw the White Walkers last week, and they seem pretty terrible. Raising up an army of zombies just screams evil, but that's only because it was happening to Jon Snow, who the series is positioned as the protagonist. Anyone who goes up against a person that looks like a hero is going to seem like a villain. And as mysterious as Melisandre seems right now, she hasn't done anything worse than any of the protagonist characters have done. But you have to consider the culture that she flows from, the Shadowbinders, generally regarded as a really hardcore bunch. But there are places where they come from, up in the shadow, that they're still afraid to go, where supposedly dragons might be. There's this ancient city called Stgai that lies way up the Ash River north of Asshai. It's thought of as a corpse city, but that's probably just because nothing can survive there. The Shadowbinders are afraid to go there. They say the area is inhabited by really dark creatures, demons and dragons. Because that area is also a peninsula, there are also a lot of caves that pockmark the coastline, where clutches of dragon eggs might be. We don't know if there are other dragons still living there, but there could be clutches of dragon eggs, especially if there are volcanoes in the area to help preserve them. So if you were to say that dragons are good, you have to consider where they come from. If the place is called the Shadow and it's regarded by terrible people as being a terrible place, how good can it be? What I think ended up happening is that at some point a volcano in that area or multiple volcanoes erupted, just, covering the area with ash, making it impossible for anything to live, killing whatever civilization originally inhabited the area. That's why the river probably came to be known as the Ash River. There might even still be an active volcano spewing ash into the atmosphere. The way I think about it, though, is that the Shadow to the east is what the Lands of Always Winter are to the north. The Lands of Always Winter are, way up here. We saw them during Season 4, briefly. It's the place that the White Walkers were banished to after the Long Night. They retreated to the coldest place possible. It makes sense that at another point in history, dragons did the exact same thing, just, retreating to an area pockmarked by volcanoes. There's no concrete evidence that dragons love volcanoes, only that ancient Valyrians first discovered dragons near the 14 Flames, which are the 14 volcanoes in the Valyrian Peninsula. The big takeaway, though, is that, if White Walkers have started to pour out of the Lands of Always Winter, then it would make sense that at some point, dragons are going to start pouring out of the Shadowlands. Just remember that as evil as the Night King seems, Melisandre and dragons come from a very evil, sinister place too. That's why I think Game of Thrones is so much fun. You have a character like Jon Snow who is caught between a rock and a cold place. It's like he's accepting help from Melisandre, who seems just as terrible as the Night's King. We just haven't gotten any of the Night's King's story yet. We really don't know what he's trying to do other than kill all of our main characters. In reality, don't think of dragons as evil creatures. They're really more like reptiles. They have their own intelligence. It's all about the person using them. So if dragons are sinister, it's only because Daenerys is using them in a sinister way, like when she's roasting people in Meereen. So here's my big question for you guys. Given this added context, as bad as the White Walkers and the Night's King seem, do you think that Daenerys and her dragons are good characters? Or do you think that they're going to be just as bad? One of the limitations of the TV show is that because of all the stuff it cuts out, you don't get a lot of context. You have to look at shows like Breaking Bad, where a villainous character is the protagonist. That could be the direction the series is going with Daenerys and her dragons. Tonight's episode is called The Dance of the Dragons. Hopefully we'll get to see some really awesome dragon stuff. So be sure to subscribe to get my video. I'll post it after the episode airs. It's actually a reference to a short story that George R. R. Martin wrote called The Dance of the Dragons. I'll talk about that a little bit more in my episode 9 video. And don't forget, there'll be a new round of the giveaway too. So just look out for that video. While you guys wait for that to post, if you want to learn more about the rise of ancient Valyria and their dragons, you can click here. And you can click here for last week's episode. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Let's high five. I'll see you guys tonight.